Same live now, yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to our first proper planning committee since last March. And, good to be here, and thank you everyone for coming tonight. First of all, we start, as always, with public session. Steve Pring is waiting to talk to us down there. So, Steve, the floor is yours. You've got 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, Steve. Do you want me in short or a short?
Welcome, Steve, and back to the public session.
Good evening, councillors. Firstly, it's great to be back in person, obviously. And but I have noted down in Devon, actually, they are still using Zoom quite a lot on council meetings. And it's good to see we've got flyers from members of the public again. Come this evening, obviously, just to update you a little bit, and I must say just a little bit just to wind up this controversial planning application from the areas we were present. As you're aware, I was not in agreement with this proposal from day one, and yeah, when it came up with FAR, it went one step further and faster than Buckinghamshire Council, and then took it to appeal the proposal. When this came about, I was informed by Buckinghamshire Council personally with a letter, because I placed objections on their website regarding the proposal, stating that if I wish to make any further proposal notes to appeal, these had to go direct to the appeals officer, and this I did in great written length, some 2 pages. There was also another question that if I requested, or anyone requested, whoever got appeals at the team, wished for an officer of the appeals conglomerate, if you like, to come and inspect the area and site, then you could do so. This again I did, and he came on the 18th of August this year. Came to my home address, looked across the area of the garage site, took some photographs from my site and my house, went over to the area and also went down to Cobham Close. So anyway, as you know, as I do, the decision was made last week, and this again, I had an email, same day I think as most of, or possibly Catherine did, from the Inspector's Office stating that the proposal was refused, so hence in some regards the decision making does prevail on right sides. So my main reason for coming tonight is just to say what I am hopefully going to try and do with the Housing Trust, BHT, when I go to meetings or when I try and catch up with someone from the Trust, and that is to try and get the area tidied up and cleaned up from what it is now, which is quite unsightly. It hardly ever gets a broom around it, let alone anything else. There are some very nice blackberry runners growing in the corner that would have been obviously dug out, and they're very good croppers. So again, these would have been lost, and there are not very many of these growing in the town area. Refurbish the areas to get them up to better standards. As I've reiterated before, apart from 1, all the rest of the 6 are in occupation. And the one that's not has got a very small hole in the roof, and when I say a very small hole, it's like a nail pin. But of course it lets water in, so that was not let out, so the person had to move. But it's still not been repaired either. There are 2 very large commercial units that have not been in use since the last tenants were either moved out or moved out on their own accord, for reasons that I try to get answers for, but I am pushing for that, and I've taken 1 seat for the sort of arc playing ball with me now, and you can put up obviously the reasons that you've lost income over 4 years. The area behind the garages that are there obviously is a bit of an issue, because what short thinking on behalf of the trust, the AHC, was basically there used to be a walkway to the right hand side of those garages that you get around the back. Well, very silly really, what they did was sell that little bit of land, like 18 inches 2 foot, to the old summer house for better access, so that they could get around the back of the old summer house better. So now they've shot themselves in the foot a little bit, because they've made it very difficult in any sense, shape or form to get around the back of those garages for maintenance, cutting it, whatever. So anyway, what I'm going to propose, when if I do get someone to be able to put this proposal to, is actually see if they will cut it down and wild seed it with wildflowers, which would be quite good for not only the area itself and wildlife as well. So just around that, we shall have to wait and see, but the outcome for all in that area of the town has been very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Steve, does Steve anyone
That's
any
fine.
questions or? Thank you for all the work you've
Any
done on
questions?
that. We do appreciate it. And what you've said tonight will be recorded in the minutes, so we can't actually
No,
vote on it or anything
no,
because
that's right. I just,
until it's finished, so-
just basically there is a note on the agenda, so it's going to be popped up tonight, but yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, if we can move on then, apologies for absence. Nina?
Apologies from Councillor O'Donoghue, but I'll have.
Yeah, I understand she's not that well, so perhaps the committee would wish to send our best wishes to.
The Councillor Davis is on the phone. So.
Yeah, she did send a apologies to Councillor Fran Davis.
Yeah.
She's at a Chatclive come Ragmore, sorry, Ragmore.
It's Ragmore. I know the
Parish Council meeting
I'll
tomorrow.
come with you. Thank you to Ragmore.
Declarations of interest, received declarations, has been any personal prejudicial interest? No, thank you. Minutes, you've all had a copy of the minutes of Monday the 16th of August. Is everyone happy with that? We'll pass those as a true record. Thank you. We move on to the Buckingham Neighbourhood Plan, Vale of Aylesbury Plan. Appendix A is the statement I gave to the Buckingham advertiser last week after consultation with the town clerk and our planning clerk. The advertiser used most of it. They also used a picture of the parish clerk, town clerk, who hasn't been with us for some years. Basically, they followed the thrust of it, and what it was that you'll be aware that the Vale has put Morton Road Phase 3 back in, it's put Osier Way in as new development, but they have removed the West Buckingham one, the land off Brackley Road, because of the absence of a Western Relief Road. They say it would not be deliverable and therefore unjustified. The big news, of course, was that the inspector said that affordable housing in the Vale has been set at 25% for new developments required to provide it, but he noted that some neighbourhood plans have a higher figure. And he said that that 35%, where it exists, can still be used. He said VALP does not explicitly say that it supersedes any neighbourhood plan policy, and so they exist side by side. VALP policy H1 requires a minimum of 25% affordable homes on site, and neighbourhood plan policies which require more than that minimum are not inconsistent with VALP. So that, in a way, is a victory for us. You will be aware that the developers of Osier Way have already offered 35% when they were willingness to try and get it through in a hurry. So hopefully they won't go back on that. And we will obviously try and push for Morton Road 3 to have the same. So, Councillor Stutchbury.
Yeah, with Buckinghamshire Council today on the other matter, which I'll talk about later. But I listened to the debate around the Vale plan from members. It was very charged to agree. If I say that the debate factored around the obvious, which is Buckinghamshire North Vale won't have a plan, without it, it'll have one in 204, which is pretty funny. It factored around discussion about the 8,000 houses which were those who were not involved in the 8,000 houses were moving south into the north, which was agreed operation. I think the words are, aren't they, Mark? In cooperation. So that was said, whether that's correct or not, the suggestion was said, well, if it isn't agreed, those 8,000 houses would not necessarily be built in the north. So, of course, Buckinghamshire is a large place with different opinions. What we have to reconcile, in my opinion, this plan is that the things that we hope are correct. I hope what Councillor Cole says is right about the affordability, but I do think we need to, we've got no, if it's coming so quickly to the Vale, and to the Buckinghamshire Council on Wednesday, there's no real time to ask legal questions. I think we do need to check that out, because when we've dealt with stuff to do with the plan in the past, we're always told, well, yeah, that is correct, but the Vale plan says in such and such so that isn't correct. So I think we do need to seek some clarification over that affordable within the Vale local plan. But of course, the areas which are not in discussion, Osie Way is in discussion, but Maidmorton Road hasn't been in discussion on affordability. So we need to check that out per se. One of the things we have to recognise is that when we started out looking at the Vale plan all those years ago in 2013, we were citing in the neighbourhood plan, and for a brief period of time, Buckinghamshire County Council did a transport plan for Buckingham, which had a western bypass. So we've had the only opportunity for relief to the town centre taken away from us and a site removed. Effectively, that site's now been moved. I stand corrected if I'm wrong. Those houses have travelled towards Milton Keynes and they're now being built there. The other element of it is it's at all stages and halfway through it when it was being discussed again. It didn't only seek to change the neighbourhood plan, it's almost set out deliberately to challenge it, in the sense that we've ended up with an accommodation on the Osie Way area, which was to be industrial, because we thought when we did the plan that we needed to have our own employment in Buckingham, able to cope with growth in the town. That wasn't the case, and that went back in, and that application will be determined at some point. We also didn't feel that Maidmorton Road 3 was at that point what we wanted within the plan. And we've also inadvertently ended up with a development in Maidmorton, which incrementally affects Buckingham because of the traffic issues with the Maidmorton, which was wasn't cited in the neighbourhood plan, and the traffic issues wasn't. Now, I fear what will happen is it will be a charged debate about the necessity to legally outplan. It will be a charged debate about how much this offers, but you've got to remember this is one portion of Buckinghamshire. Wickham have got a plan, South Bucks may feel better with the plan they've already got because it's got more protections in it than the plan that they were making for the Greenbelt. So I expect it will go through. How we handle that vote on it and whatever is indeterminate, but I should imagine it will go through. But I cannot forget and understand quite why it all had to be so difficult all the way through it. And I'm still sore and very angry about the fact that when Councillor Cole and Councillor Paul Hirings at the time turned up at many meetings, asked by us to talk about affordable housing and the affordable housing numbers, but those meetings, it never got to be heard. So that our concerns about affordable housing was never got to be heard. On a personal note, I was the only councillor in the whole of the district who put any amendments to the Vale plan as it went through. I remember the discussions in council clearly, and councillor stood up and said he can't legally put an amendment, and the officer said he can legally put an amendment. This is the time to amend it. My amendments were to have 35% affordable and remove Osie Way back to industrial. That was painful enough at the time. So the thoughts of where we go has been constant. I am worried what this will do for the young people in Buckinghamshire and North Buckinghamshire if we receive a large portion of the government's growth, because they will say they only have to get 25% affordable. And do we really not want our children to live in Buckinghamshire and North Buckinghamshire? I think we all do. And people need to have an opportunity to survive. So it's going to have its lag, it's going to be there. And what we must, I believe, lastly, what we must insist is that there's a proper understanding. And there was overtones of that being so today from the cabinet member, who is a new cabinet member, that it's important that neighbourhood plans are worked with and that neighbourhood plans are seen as a good thing, and that they must work with neighbourhood plans properly. So I take him at his word. He's a new cabinet member in a new election. So I take him at his word, and I took a little bit of comfort in that, but there's nothing in it to cheer about, as far as you can be concerned in Buckingham, I think. And I think Councillor Cole put it very well in the paper, probably somewhat more polite than I would have done.
Unfortunately, the paper ignored the affordable housing element of it, but I don't know if anyone else wants to speak. Just two things I'm going to say on the plan. A, it cannot be, nothing can be changed now. The inspector's word is final. It's up to Buckinghamshire Council to either approve it or they don't. So that's the thing. One thing it did jump out, of course, is the housing, the population figures the inspector used. They're 10 years out of date. It was all based on the 2011 census. So Buckingham is shown as 12,040 people, where in actual fact we're now well over 15 or over, possibly because of all the developments we've had, including Lace Hill, Mays Morton, Morton Road, St Rumble's Fields, Foundry Drive, Hamilton Place, etc., etc. And the other point I'd make is that I did let you all know about the story in the Times on Saturday, which I believe is going to be clarified tomorrow by the Prime Minister, that they're dropping the planning laws to insist on 300,000 houses being built every year, being forced on people, because they have actually decided 240,000 are being built already without the government pressure. And there's 1.1 million planning permissions already given, which developers haven't yet taken up. And the government is looking at the possibility of charging council tax on every unbuilt house on those lands to try and stop land banking. So, Councillor Sutcliffe, Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, obviously I agree with what a lot of that Robin said there. I guess a few thoughts occurred to me. One is, I worry about the infrastructure. There's constant debate these days about whether we have enough medical facilities in the town. It seems that the population has grown, as you just highlighted. And of course, with the developments that are now heralded in the Vale, it will grow still further. And what I worry about is whether the Section 106 agreements to be brokered will find any way of addressing those issues, because clearly they haven't done so far. And that for me again highlights the importance and the value of having town and parish councils involved early on in those Section 106 negotiations, because we're here on behalf of the people of Buckingham, and we can shout louder than most, say, you've got to sort this out. There are wider problems, of course, of GP recruitment, but nonetheless, we can try and put that in the Section 106 and try to ensure that money doesn't end up sloshing elsewhere in the county if the building is happening in our bailiwick. I have to say I am very, very cynical about this idea of calling in the Maids Morton planning application yet again to the Strategic Sites Committee. That feels like a bit of play acting, because frankly, if the VAL says it's going to be built upon as it's approvable as land for development, then calling it in, even if the calling in results in the planning application being refused, I think I put good money on the fact it would be accepted by the planning inspector but a few months later. So it's just, what's the point, frankly?
Thank you.
Of that. And what I worry about now is whether the VALP, once it is signed off, and it probably will be on Wednesday, whether that effectively neutralises not just our neighbourhood plan, but every other neighbourhood plan in the Aylesbury Vale. And then I think we have to resolve where we go from here. Obviously, there are some bits that are not overlapping, but there aren't many bits in our plan that aren't in some way covered by the VALP, which means effectively it is now the latest plan. And that means most of our plan disappears in effect. So therefore we have to work out how can we put in a new neighbourhood plan, which will be compatible with the VALP, that's the requirement of the law, and still do something unique and different for Buckingham. I think that's the challenge we've got ahead, and we'll talk about that tomorrow morning at the workshop. But I'm deeply depressed by this because it will go through, and if nothing else, it will mean if there's a 25% basic threshold for affordable housing, and High Wycombe, as we know, has a threshold of 35 to 40%, then guess where the developers are going to want to build? It's creating an inequity within the county that will slosh more and more housing into the north, away from the lovely greenbelt areas of the south, which they're so desperate to protect. But suddenly, you know what? I think our countryside is as beautiful as it is in the south, but then I'm biased.
Thank you. Councillor Wright? Did you have your hand up?
No,
I'm sorry, did someone down there have a hand up? No. Councillor Stutchbury, I'm just going to remind you, the mayor did say that we'd have 3 minutes limit and only speak once.
Well,
on
it
the
is
subject.
relevant to what you said.
Yeah.
I did today speak to an officer on the way out to the meeting about the very point that you said, that housing levels. I forgive for not mentioning it when I was speaking first time around. Please can I ask through you, Chairman, and the town clerk, that we send the appropriate numbers through them, because I did point out to them on the council tax alone we were 15,000 residents, and that 12,000, if they're going to make value judgments on a future plan, that having a low number in Buckingham, which will become a familiar number to residents, remember the council will be making this, you might live in South Buckinghamshire. They think, well, 12,000 isn't that big. They can make a decision. So I think it's important that there was some slight changes done to it on detail, but I think before they agree it tomorrow, or Wednesday, if they agree it, whatever my feelings about the content of it, they need to have the figures correct. And I think you're quite right to raise that, and I apologise I didn't say it earlier.
Of course, all the figures, of course, are going to be.
Well, this is what counts. I think that would mean the whole plan would have been agreed with 2011 figures, which means that the growth which has taken place never did. We can't. So I think that needs to be, I bring it up at council, but it will just be a political argument about that. I think we need to write to them and point them out our figures for Buckingham, if that can be agreed through you, Chairman, and I think it's important.
Yeah, does everyone have to agree with that? Just from my opinion. Thank you. Karen, I'm going to ask you to speak on the document we sent out. You sent to Councillor Turner about planning
yes,
application.
absolutely.
Thank you.
I was wondering whether to speak on the Vale itself or whether on the action updates. So if we're on to action updates, I'd also echo a lot of what's already been said about Vale, and clearly desperate disappointment in Morton about the site being included. And I think what we all feel is the most insulting thing of all is that they consider, they being the inspector and the planning department, that Morton is contiguous with Buckingham and can be viewed in the same respect as Buckingham. So that does not bode well for the future if we are all going to be, our communities are going to be run roughshod over and totally ignored as existing historical communities in the way that the planners seem to have decided is best for them. Specifically on the site, I hear what Councillor Harvey said, but actually there is a real reason for going back to third determination. Undoubtedly it will go through, but at least it should go through with the correct approvals on the S106, which are completely inadequate as they stand. And I don't know if you've all had a chance to see this draft letter that the action group have formed, but Councillor Warren White has requested it to be called in for a third determination, and I believe that Councillor Ward and Ollie Wilson will also do the same. But specifically, the phasing requirements for affordable housing have not been set out. The wheelchair access requirements that's been talked about has not been set out. And perhaps most important, well, not most important, but certainly as important, is the monitor and manage strategy. How can you agree a monitor and manage strategy to be completed after the occupation of the 100th dwelling? And the monitor and manage must be triggered at the start of the development, the commencement of the development. All these are very important points for the well, just to sort of ease the anger that is felt in Maids Morton, apart from anything else, but it clearly, on a much broader level, if S106 agreements are going to be written with so many errors and so many agreements that were put to the strategic committee last time round, and they expect to see them in the S106, it is actually planning approval is actually unlawful.
Thank you, Karen. I think what the inspector said, didn't he, said that Maids Morton relied so much on Buckingham for its infrastructure that it was no longer a separate entity, but coalesced with Buckingham, I think was the word to use.
Yes.
Councillor Hetherington?
I was just going to make a small observation about the north-south divide business. Don't forget that with the fallout from Amersham and Chesham, the Chilterns is likely to be made into a national park, which is going to make it even more pushing it up to the north.
Thank you for that. Councillor Stutchbury?
Just a question to, through you, Chairman. The constitution of the council to call a petition in the, I think it's 25, some level, 15% of the councillors. I'm surprised that on the calling, unless it's different on planning, the constitution states a very high amount of councillors. I think it's 15%. I'm surprised that.
Really?
I'm surprised they haven't reached across the aisle and across the town to at least get the Buckingham councillors to. I always like calling. I always love calling. It gives you an opportunity to discuss it again. Can you please check that? I'm happy to have my name to call it if that's the case. And I can imagine that how that fits with Councillor Feely and Caroline, no, that's for them to decide. But if it's a high burden, I wouldn't want us to think, if it is a low burden of 3 councillors, I should be making lots of callings soon. But I thought it was 15% of the council. I was damn correct me if I'm wrong. So I think we do need to do some work on that to get the numbers up. It's really heavy numbers within the council.
Thank you. Karen?
Yes, I wasn't aware of that. But obviously, the 3 councillors I mentioned are councillors for the ward. So if it would appear that if there's more success with 50% of councillors, then we certainly, as you say, should forward to councillors in this area. Because I'm surprised that it's disappointing really that one wasn't conducted earlier. And with a reason signed something, which is really a shame. I think probably done briefly on that on planning, but I think we need, can you just go and check that? There may be a specific thing on planning because it's a specific ward issue that they can do that, and I may be wrong, but the constitution is pretty tardy on the percentage of councillors it needs to call it in.
Karen?
I would just say this is a draft letter, it hasn't gone yet.
Yeah.
So but there are some signatures being
It could be
collected and sent.
It could be how it works on the constitution committee.
Yeah.
Maybe they can answer that question.
I don't know whether I would clerk can confirm that.
Yes, sir. So, sorry, I wasn't plugging my laptop.
Just how many councillors are needed to request a calling for such things going down?
I don't know.
No.
I think it's 15% on the general constitution, but on the planning thing, it may reduce. I've not seen that. I'm sure Mr. Newton will have an opinion on it. He usually loves these legal questions.
Karen, your letter obviously is accompanied by a form at the back for signing. Are you asking Buckingham Town Council to support you on this?
I certainly we're asking Buckingham Town Council to support this draft letter, either with individual signatures or as a body. I felt that was up to you, Chairman, to discuss that with him.
Yeah, Paul could ask you about that, but this Maiden Walnut Drive appeal to Councillor Turner that section 106
Yeah.
monies should be looked at again.
So in terms of do we want to support the letter?
Do we want to support the letter? Can we do that as a committee, or does it have to go to full council, or?
I'm happy for the committee to do that because the committee's got delegated responsibilities for planning matters.
Would the committee be happy?
Propose we do so, Chairman.
Right, proposed by Councillor Stutchbury, seconder. The Mayor, Councillor Gately seconding it.
Always good to try it.
Thank you. All those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Thank you. Those against? Abstentions? No. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, on that. Second item, North Bucks Parishes Planning Consortium. This is a new regular item. Councillor Ralph is our representative on the consortium. And we've received your report, haven't we? Is there anything you'd like to add to it?
Yes, if I may,
Please, yes.
a couple of quick things. First of all, I apologise if it's a little bit scrappy, but I've actually not attended a meeting so far, even though I might have thought I had, in as much as there were some technical difficulties on Zoom that meant that the meeting I should have attended didn't take place. It was pushed back a week. I was then on holiday, so I wasn't able to. So I cribbed as much as I could from the minutes as they were published and put something together with a couple of items which I did asterisk, because we talked about the possibility of trying to get together with other parishes and that to at least discuss those issues. And in the end, we wanted to try and get an extraordinary meeting of the NBPC, which they refused. Very charmingly, but they refused. Nevertheless, they have pulled the late October meeting forward to the 4th. So with your permission, I'll be attending that, even though we have a full council meeting on that night, because I think they're important issues. And as the representative, I feel I might make better use of my time on this particular occasion. I'm going to try and keep it going each month when there is something to say. And if there isn't, I shall say there is nothing to say this month. But I don't want it to dribble away in about 2 or 3 months' time. I'd like to keep it going because I think trying to work in concert over the coming months, even years in fact, with other parishes and town council is going to be quite an important thing for us to do.
Thank you. Well, when Paul Hirons is chairman, he said it was like trying to herd kittens. So. Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury.
It's probably not a relevant question, but has there been any engagement with it from Buckinghamshire Council Planning, in the sense that North Bucks Planning and I was only too aware of the makeup of the cabinet and direction of their seats in the cabinet today, and as we're going to have all this development, it seems that it must be a good voice for us, an apolitical voice. So, have they responded generously to it and acknowledged it?
I'm not quite sure I understand what I'm being asked.
I'll put it in blunt.
Please.
I was trying to talk around it. Have Buckinghamshire Council recognised this meeting? Have they recognised it at all? Because
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I believe it's the parishes and town councils who get together, as it were, to look at common issues. I'm not sure they are directly involved. As you'll note near the bottom of the report, the NBPPC was requesting inclusion as a stakeholder, and they aren't actually stakeholders, and hopefully they might well become stakeholders when discussing the Buckinghamshire local plan. But that's really within the gift of Buckinghamshire Council, and they haven't said anything so far. Hopefully we'll hear about that.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
I think it's only right that we accept and Councillor Ralph's report and to support, because it's good. But I think what we should do further than that, we should support the actions of one of our councillors doing work on behalf of us with a request that this organisation is accepted as a representative consultee for the very reasons that it's doing good work, and it's collaborative work and it's valuable work. So through you, Chairman, and through the clerk, is it a way that we can either agenda item this for a future meeting, because it's not on the agenda, to actually say that we recommend that we agree that this should be an organisation that Buckinghamshire Council recognises. I don't know how we do that, or whether we have a talk with other clerks about how we go forward, because it would be really unfortunate if they come out now, they're talking about the consultations on the Buckinghamshire Plan in some small ways beginning, and this organisation, which has got all that experience of the Vale Plan and the scars to show for it, isn't able to prevent mistakes again. I think it's important that we, in some way, do it. I think through you, Chairman, and the clerk, how we do that. Whether we agree tonight that we write to the cabinet member and the leader of council and ask them to make this an official constitution.
Could we ask the clerk to look into it? We are paid up members, of course. The BPC thing. So, Councillor Hardy.
Yeah, I'm a little bit cautious about this. I mean, I obviously believe in there should be deep and wide consultation on the forthcoming Buckinghamshire local plan. And obviously we are statutorily there because we're a town council, as our parish councils and so on. I don't know whether organisations like the Buckingham Society are, because in my view, the North Bucks Planning Consortium is like a civic body, but for a wider situation. And if the Buckingham Society are, then I see no reason why the North Bucks Planning Consortium shouldn't be as well. I would be reluctant, though, to give that any kind of status if, for example, the Buckingham Society doesn't, or indeed a VAP doesn't, because these are bodies that are also membership organisations from a variety of different places. So I'd like to find out what the criteria are for deciding whether who and what is a statutory consultee, and then decide on a decision before we start saying that the North Bucks Planning Consortium should be one. Let's find out what they're regarding as being
Could we ask the
consultees first, and then take a view on that. And maybe Karen can comment about whether society is seen as a, you see it as consultancy.
We are not at the moment, but nationally, Civic Voice are pressing for civic societies to be made statutory consultees on all matters to do with planning. And this has been taken to the all-party group for civic societies, and that's their recommendation.
Okay.
Or is that something you could come back with to us? Or
Yes, I suppose my question would be, are we talking about wanting to be a formal consultee, which in a way seems like a group that's made up of formal consultees also be asking to act as a formal consultee as well, which seems like I'm not quite sure about that. I suspect there'd be a negative response on that. Or is it also about, are they just being engaged with by Buckinghamshire Council? So the initial query about actually are planners supporting and engaging with the group in a constructive, helpful fashion?
Yeah.
So should we start with a softer question about, are you working to help us? Because we're working together to do something. So actually, can you help us and work with us? Rather than going straight for that they should be formally consulted about planning decisions.
Yeah.
yeah, please.
Let's wind it back then, and taking on both what Councillor Hunt says and Town Clerk. Maybe we should just write to them and ask them, who do you presume will be formal consultees to the Buckinghamshire Plan? And then we may see who isn't on the list, and at that point we can discuss it and suggest why it's weak, because it could be that we get back the Amersham Teapot Society are seen as some other society is on it, but there isn't the same here, in which case then we can have a proper discussion about it. In Charing Cross in it, but Buckingham Society isn't. I can imagine we might see some things like that. So I think that was where we ought to just get who they think they are, and then have a proper discussion around it in a proper way, taking on board what South Harvey said about not perceiving things to people. I think he's right. I think it's a step by step. Right?
Councillor Rowe?
Thank you. Again, I referred to the sort of top of the conversation. I haven't actually been to a meeting, so it's all a bit speculative in my head. I suspect, and without at all being patronising, we're one of the larger settlements in the area, and we can sort of stand on our own 2 feet and what have you, and we have some strength relatively. But I suspect that there's quite a lot of very small parishes in the NBPPC, and consequently, if we're all acting independently, they might get steamrolled a bit at times, and in fact it's to put I hate the expression, but to put an arm around some of the smaller ones and see there is a common good, and because they're all just next door, aren't they? And there's a sort of a strength in being a group, and I think that, I suspect that's what the feeling was when this was raised.
Yeah, and historically, we have always supported each other.
Yes.
Issues like Solden Chase, for instance, we all came together on those things because they have an impact on Buckingham as well as all the parishes. So, Paul, if we could just have a look into that, come back with some suggestions. Thank you very much. I'm mindful of the time. We've got a lot of planning applications tonight. Thank you, everyone. Could we start off then? Action reports first. Appendix C, you've had the list in front of you. 2 of the items, bypass bridge and town hall frontage. So Councillor White will respond after the turn from leave. He's not here tonight, so I assume he's back from leave now.
I think it's going down emails today. So.
Right, Councillor Clutchford.
I did respond to the bypass bridge 2 meetings ago, so I don't know what response you're going to get different from Councillor White, other than that they didn't see it as a priority to fix, and it would just be basically tarmacs and they'd mend faults as they arose. That's what I got, and we can go back again, but that's what we can get. They're not recognising our concerns.
Nothing's been done, is it?
It's marked up with white paint, so that's happening.
Thank you. Trees, inviting Mr. Passmore to a meeting. Town clerk report on his progress.
I will report back to the next meeting.
Thank you. Section 106 quarterly reports. There has been some correspondence with Mr. Rowling. I think this is things that Robin raised originally. His last report's about was there any money to cover smaller attenuation ponds that they sold. He came back and said, no, this money is required to mitigate flood risk around the main river in and around Buckingham. Call-ins, Old Telephone Exchange and 61 Morton Road. Call-in requests acknowledged, but we've had nothing since then. Catherine? Thank you.
No, but the fact that, because it's me calling it in, I like to have an acknowledgement that they've noticed.
Yeah, thank you. And then finally, Oddfellows Hall, we have been requesting updates to the alleged unauthorised work there. We've heard nothing since the 7th of September, but enforcement are well aware of the problems. And I think Maggie Trump has also been feeding them. Carol, anything?
No, the last I heard was that the parcel, it's been handed as onto building regulations rather than enforcement. There's certainly no enforcement officer, as I understand it, just yet been up.
Thank you. And enforcement are well aware of the problems at the moment. Is there anything else under action list that anyone would like to raise? No, thank you. We'll move on to planning applications then. The first one being 17 Gifford Place. This is on Page Hill. This application's been before us twice before. It was approved after appeal before. They then came back with some amendments, which we weren't happy about. They withdrew that and they've come back just last week with this new amendments where it's a new, it's first floor, part 2-storey, part single-storey, front extension and garage conversion into living accommodation. And what they want to do is just bring the down the ground floor fascia forward slightly. I don't know if anyone has any comments on that. Karen?
No, we thought actually it was an improvement, bringing the extension across the front of the property. But it gave rise to quite a long discussion on parking and electric charges. And in design codes, what we ought to try and ensure that parking, which is, in this case is 3 cars in front of the property, as in so many, is on permeable ground. So there's the drainage is thought of, first of all, and secondly, that charging points are going to be a thing of the future. I mean, we all are going to have an electric car within the next decade. And this is the moment to start thinking about electric charging points.
Well, in fact, tomorrow we have a meeting of the Buckingham Neighbourhood Plan Working Committee, and charging points and solar panels on all new developments will be on the agenda. So, yeah, thank you for that. So, is everyone happy with that? No objections? Councillor Harvey?
No objections, but can we start with the solar panels now? Then we're going to be redoing the roof. Can we say that we would ask them to consider putting solar panels in when they redo the roof?
I think it's a north-facing roof, isn't it?
There's a north facing roof.
Well, they can still do it as part of the work, because they're going to be up there with scaffolding. I mean, why don't we start trying to encourage, why don't we start trying to encourage people who are developing their houses to develop them with green and carbon reducing options in mind? We don't have a policy on that yet, but we can certainly ask, can't we?
I can't see why we shouldn't do both, because if they're bringing the fascia, the front wall forward, then now is the time to put the charging point in, isn't it?
Yeah.
So they couldn't have done it before. And we can suggest that south facing roofs have solar panels.
Yeah.
So, no objections.
Might balance out. You know,
Well, I mean,
the car on the curb fan.
a bunch of builders on site, you might as well try and get some more stuff done as well at the same time. It adds cost, I know that, but they may well, to consider, solar panels, batteries, charging points to future-proof this development. And I think that should be as a standard now to all the applications that we see. I mean, we talked a lot about lighting in the property down the road in the BP station and the importance of having enough light in there so they have to keep switching on lights. Whatever we can do to reduce energy usage, is there going to be adequate insulation? Obviously, big news today because of the motorway and so on. I'm not saying we just do this. Well, yeah, I am saying it on every single application. Why don't we say, please consider the carbon reducing implications of your development? Here are some suggestions, and that should be a standard paragraph attached to all of our responses. Is what I'm proposing. I know it's a big thing, and I know it's not on the agenda.
Most of our applications.
Well, yes, but that's my proposal.
Thank you. A seconder for that, please.
No, just.
I'm looking for a seconder first. No seconder. No. Okay. Councillor Stutchford.
I'm just going to abstain, obviously, because I'm on planning on that. I think we need to listen to what Councillor Harvey said and find out what the rights of it are. When you consider, I believe when you consider a plan application, you consider what's in it and what it was about. Is it something that we need to talk about maybe tomorrow, and maybe that's the appropriate meeting to talk about that, I think.
Thank you.
And I'll stay on these things and come back.
Thank you.
So I'd
So,
like to take it that it's no objections.
just no objection. Yeah, thank you. That's all agreed. Item 2, Land off London Road. This is the Lace Hill Health Centre. Just for the benefit of those who don't know the history of it, in 2009, Lace Hill got approval for 700 dwellings, which included school, employment and healthcare areas. Outline permission was given after appeal on December the 24th, 2018. Reserved matters application was therefore required by December 24, 2021, that's this year. There's been no reserved matters showing any details yet submitted, only the landscaping, which we got before you tonight. A rather cart before the horse situation. You'll be aware that Swan Practice is currently holding a public conversation about what people want. A little bit late, having done it once already, but you've no doubt read what Catherine said. You've seen the plan. I'll make just a couple of comments on it and then throw it to the floor. There's 119 parking spaces. Only 12 of them are blue badge disabled spaces, which is 9%. And there's no parent and child spaces. Vegetation that they're suggesting here, many of them are toxic plants. Why would you have toxic plants where you've got a health centre? And as Catherine said in our briefing today, why not medicinal plants, you know, like the Chelsea Physic Garden? So we need a lot more details on the reserve matters, and the inspector in turning down the transformation of the two surgeries in town into housing, both being refused at appeal, and he said during it, part of his reason was he didn't believe that Lace Hill was going to come on stream for some time yet, because he doubted that they'd get the detailed planning applications in by December, which means probably have to go through the whole thing again. But it's up to you, the floor, what you want, what you'd like to do. Carolyn.
Well, on the landscape issue, yes, I'm not sure that you'd all spot the laburnum, which is completely absurd, have a laburnum tree in the middle of the courtyard of this centre, but also we feel very strongly that native plants should predominate, and really this inclusion of thorn in these standardised landscape schemes are unacceptable. We wish to object to them. Right. So those are two specific plants, but the suggestion of Chelsea Physic planting would be much more.
Well, I say that's thanks to Catherine.
Yes, but that
What do other people feel about this? Is it too soon? They've gone ahead with the landscaping before we even know what the building is going to look like. As Catherine again pointed out in the notes, you know, the renal treatment side has now changed from the right-hand side of the building to the left-hand side, and then who knows where we are. Big problems over the entrance, where you've got to walk across a courtyard to get to reception from the front entrance, etc., etc. Councillor Hardy.
I'm not even sure the renal bit's going to happen there. Anyway, I thought that had been superseded.
It is on here on the plan. It's all marked as renal. So.
I would support what Karen says about the planting out, and given they've got the opportunity here to plant something local, health-wise, it's just not. I mean, I'm no expert on planting out, but seeing things in there they're from Mexico and New Zealand seems a bit bonkers, really. I mean, we've got plenty of Buckinghamshire flora, you know, to use.
Now, what's the carbon footprint of bringing plants from New Zealand?
I mean, what's that all about?
Councillor Roth.
When I first saw this come up, I thought, oh, I recognised the layout of all this, and then I realised that really they'd taken a very early iteration of the plans and drawn up, and dare I say, planted a landscaping scheme on the top, and it has all the elements to me of just a quick rush job to get it in, but I'm not sure exactly what it will actually do, because it's by definition it's going to change. And like Councillor Harvey, I had understood that there was some question over the renal element of it, because it's an independent, separate organisation. Well, necessarily going forward, I don't know quite where I got with that, but I certainly had the feeling that was the case.
Well, certainly the Churchill was going to be involved, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think things have moved on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do? We defer this until we got further information, more details on reserve matters?
Yes.
We can't really take a decision on a few bushes when we haven't got the building.
We say what Carolyn said, that you know, we would favour local flora,
Yeah.
not a hodgepodge of international.
Yeah.
And poison.
But,
And poisonous plants.
but in the meantime, we can't take a decision until there's more details on reserve matters.
We'll go for broke, let's have deadly nightshade, it might reduce the demand on that.
don't take your horse in there, Karen. Thank you. Item 3, 25 Willow Drive. This is a variation of condition already given relating to a single-storey extension, private garage conversion to dwelling house. This is on Badgers. Is everyone
No objection.
Everyone's happy with that?
Very happy.
Thank you. Item 4 is 14 Lemborough Close. It's a single-storey side and rear extensions. Again, you've all seen the plans and Catherine's comments.
No objection.
Everyone happy? No objections? Thank you. The next two applications can be considered together. This is 6 Castle Street, householder and listed building applications for demolition of conservatory, erection of rear extension. This is the middle house of the 3 between the Buckingham Taylors and the car park entrance for the Villiers. The garden, it's quite a big garden, it can't be seen from the public domain. It's a fairly modern conservatory they're going to replace with an oak conservatory, enlarge the kitchen, which needs it from the photographs. And I would suggest, subject to historic building or the Heritage Officer being happy, the Buckingham Society's.
Right, I thought that
Agreed.
rather a good application, it deserves to be supported.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Perhaps we could put that in. Buckingham Society, and we both feel it deserves to be supported. Thank you.
Yeah.
Item 7, 15 Newcombe Crescent. This is a proposed single-storey rear extension. Catherine made the point in her advice that the extension is very close to the garage. It's less than 3 metres, the gap between the garage and the extension, which doesn't seem like good planning practice.
Yeah,
Karen.
yes, if there was any material consideration, it might be overdevelopment on the site. But we couldn't really point to any particular area of the overdevelopment, other than the fact it's going to look cramped and rather spoil the overall setting. But it's in the rear, so.
Does anyone else have any comments on it?
Difficult to see what we're going to get out of it. No objections from me.
Okay, thank you for that, Carolyn, but no objections. Every application we've done so far, apart from Gifford Place, notices have gone up, but today, 2 went up today, 3 Wayne Close, which is the erection of a building for home gym involving relocation of existing shed. Some concern over the trees on this site. Anthony, I think you'd like to speak.
Yes, the Buckingham Society will discuss this as well, the birch tree. And being realistic, we wondered, and I wonder as a councillor, I wonder if the tree is going to interfere with the application or vice versa, whether we could make a condition of the planning is to actually plant a replacement tree elsewhere in the garden, thus maintaining, it's a silver birch, so it isn't like a grand old oak or anything, but nevertheless, to maintain the amount of flora and make that a condition.
Yeah, it's a pragmatic
Yeah,
solution.
pragmatic, yes. You don't want to stop people doing things, but pay attention.
Catherine did raise a question about would the building require a foundation slab that might interfere with roots?
It could do, and therefore the tree would suffer, and therefore putting an alternative one in would be the answer, really,
Okay.
as you say, pragmatic.
Yeah. Has anyone else any comments? Yes, we're all happy with that? Subject to Councillor Ralph's suggestion.
Big gym.
Thank you. Item 9, 12 to 13 Market Hill. This is the back of M&Co. It's a part rear extension to provide storage area to the ground floor. What they're planning on doing is covering over that rear section. There is a basement, got fire escapes which are going to be removed, and the applicant is suggesting that if they had a fire, they could use the lifts. I thought that might catch your attention, Andy. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if there is a fire, there could be electrical fire. There may be no electricity to operate the lifts, but Carolyn, you
think it's the most absurd application.
you picked up the same.
We had a long discussion about fire escapes, and we actually cannot believe that they were serious about this application. I mean, apart from the fire angle, the drainage, this hole in the ground. I did need to check the portal before I came out to see the fire officer or any other statutory body.
I checked at 6 o'clock.
You checked,
No.
no, there were. I cannot believe that they would let this through. We certainly would want to object on this grounds.
Yes, I think what we need the fire officer's report before we can make an informed decision. Is that good with everybody? Thank you.
Is this the shop wanting an extension? Is this the shop wanting an extension?
Yeah, they're going to. That's the back of M&Co. They want to cover over what's a well at the moment goes down to the basement.
It did form part of the previous application that was withdrawn.
Okay.
They withdrew all of it, but obviously the shop people wanted this bit as extra storage. The trouble is that basement is actually the shop level, the shop floor level, because of the fall of the ground towards the market. So that fire escape would be customers if they had to go that way.
Right.
So if we had a fire on the front of the shop, where do the customers go?
Yeah.
The upper fire escape with the bridge, that is their existing stockroom and offices.
So the staff will be all right.
There should be shopping out, customers should be made.
Thank you, everyone. Amended plans. This is on University of Buckingham Campus Station Road, the log cabin, to provide a multi-faith prayer room. There are 2 objections on the portal that come up this week, and they're both about parking, saying the reduction of parking spaces will have a egregious effect on Station Road. Councillor Hardy.
I would concur with that because it's going to take away at least 5, if not 6 spaces. It's an odd-shaped site, and it's still not accurate because that little bit sticking up does not exist. That's trees that fall away very rapidly. So there is a sense of we knew this ground better than the original architects did. Surely there's going to be some sort of mitigation for more parking somewhere, because it will require. Are there no planning regulations about what's required for a building of this kind in terms of, for some sort of parking? If this was a house, we'd expect, a couple of parking spaces, not reduction.
The documents don't have an estimate of the likely number of people to be housed in it at any given time. So you can't really estimate. I did point out when I sent the deferred decision last time that the station car park, the 51 places that they're so pleased about being across the road, is actually accessed by pass. So it can't be open to the public unless they lift the barrier for specific times. And what they've just done is put the cabin straight across the disabled parking bay there is.
Yeah.
Which means that if they are going to replace the disabled parking bay, and members may wish to make this a
I think
point,
we will, Catherine.
that means that of the 5 that are in a row on the left-hand side of that car park, you're going to lose probably at least the middle 3.
Yeah.
By the time you've made it to, so you're whichever way, you're losing parking.
And I guess the question is who parks there at the moment, because it is a university car park.
Oh, yes.
It's not for public use. It's not.
But
parked
the
by
statement the
students.
documents make is that they expect everybody to walk there.
Members of the public are invited to use it. So
But in which case they're actually encouraging members of the public to go there, but reducing the number of parking spaces.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
This doesn't conform to access for all. That's my bottom line. Not access for all. If they're not disabled, and they expect people to walk, then it's not access for all.
Well, people may be coming from, you know, you may be Muslim, Islamic, coming from the villages, you know, we want to come and use it.
This is not.
The other point, of course, to bear in mind is that not everybody of all faiths have their day of worship on Sunday. Some are Friday, Islamic,
Yeah,
some are Saturday, Jewish. And,
Then there will be feast days on other days as well.
yeah, and the whole intention of this is to provide a multi-faith prayer room where you can do exactly.
The intention is good, but I know certain faiths will not want to share a prayer room with the others.
Yeah. Sorry, just before I actually, the highways officer for Buckinghamshire Council, for some reason said the proposed development's being considered by the County Highways Authority. And we believe that the access arrangements and parking provisions are quite satisfactory. The application will have no material impact on safety or operation of the adjoining public highway, which seems to be complete opposite to what we're
That
saying.
happens to me that he's done the entire report from Google.
Yeah, ticking
He's
boxes.
not been to Station Road. He certainly hasn't been in school term time because he really had the opportunity, given the timescale on this application, because the schools have been off for 6 weeks. Now the Latin pupils are back, Station Road will be as usual madhouse.
and it gets worse through the year as they pass their driving tests.
Yeah,
Mm.
as you know, the sixth forms at Latin are allowed to drive to school. So.
I mean, there is parking not far away. That is, I think, underused, which is the parking at the back of the flats on, is it Lemborough Road? Because those flats on the, sort of just down from Station Terrace, those parking spaces are often empty. They're not used very much. And I wonder whether there's some way in which.
Are they publicly available?
Well, no, they're not. That's the point. And I'm wondering whether there's some way in which they could allow people to park there, walk across from Station Terrace, and they're
If they can walk from Station Terrace, they can walk from the island car park,
yeah,
although it is uphill,
yeah.
quite noticeably so.
So what do members feel about this? Sorry,
That's all right. It had occurred to me when looking at this that at the moment, certainly, the university's plans for the Innovate site have been pushed way back, and consequently, something like a hut, which could be moved in the future, with not too much difficulty, why don't they put it somewhere there and allocate as many parking spaces as one feels they need to? There's plenty of space there. And okay, when it comes to major changes, they could accommodate it, or even accommodate prayer facilities inside the design and do away with log cabins altogether. It's a thought, that's
Yeah. Unfortunately, we have to deal with the application.
I do appreciate
Yeah.
that, but I mean.
So are we going to continue our opposition on the grounds of parking?
I think so.
Parking and access, thank you, Andy, access for all
Yeah,
that's
it's absolutely right.
Yeah.
I think on that basis, yes, we have to.
Yeah.
Margaret,
Yeah, I agree, we should
Yeah.
object on those, on that basis, but I think we possibly could say that we, in principle, agree that the provision of a multi-faith prayer room is a good one,
Yeah.
but just question that this particular location for it, and have they thought about other sites that are available? I mean, there's also the old football ground, isn't there,
Yes,
which they own, and, they've got plenty of land,
they've got
actually.
St Bernardines as well.
Yeah.
So-
They've got,
Yeah.
and just not reduce parking further.
Yeah.
And particularly because in there, if they do go ahead with that student accommodation on the old railway station, then certainly in the short term, there's going to be a further reduction of car parking spaces. So to do this here just seems bizarre, actually. Although a good idea in principle to make this provision.
So the Franciscan site is filling up. I'll produce a better idea.
With quarter cannons. Carolyn.
I was just going to more or less say what the mayor's just said. We discussed it at some length in our meeting and came to exactly the same conclusion. The university has plenty of land and surely they could accommodate this very desirable facility for the public at large as well as the students. And I think the society could write on its own bat and just suggest that we thought the innovate side was the obvious one.
Thank you. Right, that is the actual planning applications. There's a number of tree applications, most of which we've all already done by emails. The very last one had to be done urgently, the tree was cracking. Talking to Neil Passmore, he says that the big problem this summer has been that the spring and the summer we've had, the trees are much lusher than normal. There's more weight on the branches, which is causing damage to trees and getting towards rainforest type of atmosphere. So that's one of the reasons there's been quite a lot of branches breaking and splitting, which is what we've been seeing. Catherine, anything on the trees?
No, except that I'm waiting for additional information on the Brooks Court one.
Right.
The paperwork came in, it was complete nonsense.
That's not
Marked 3 trees, only one of them was in Brooks Court.
right. Thank you. That was item 14. Planning decisions. 4 applications were approved, 2 of which we opposed. The first one was 1 Pearl Close. This is up on Lace Hill. We opposed it, saying there wasn't enough parking. The planning officer said there was enough parking, it was adequate. And she was happy with it, and they approved it. 9 Addington Road. This is one that we spent quite a long time on the steep hill of Addington Road. House halfway up on the right. We opposed it on the grounds of overdevelopment, being overbearing. There was no parking and damage to trees. She came back and said it's not overbearing, it's not overdevelopment. The trees are not protected, and there's no parking anyway for the houses in Addington Road. No specific parking for each house, and it's close enough to the town centre that they could park there. So that was her reason for approving it. Again, I think the tick box exercise, maybe never been to Buckingham, but refused was 37 Badgers Way. This is a park garage conversion, first floor side extension, which we opposed and wanted called in, but planning agreed that it's less than 1 metre from the boundary, and there was inadequate parking. So, and then 17 Gifford Place withdrawn, that's the one that we've dealt with tonight, the reapplication. Appeal decisions, we've got one shown here, which is the garage site at Oven Crescent, which is what Steve Trim was talking about tonight. That's been refused at appeal for non-determination because of its close proximity to the summer house and to the conservation area. He said he's noted there were a lot of other comments made, but we didn't need to address those because the main reason for refusal was the conservation area. So that's one up for the Buckingham Society and for the Buckingham Neighbourhood Plan. Since then, over the last 3 days, both of the Swan Practice applications have been refused at appeal. That's North End Surgery, which is going to be turned into 8 houses, Verney Close Surgery, which is going to become a block of flats. And in both cases, the inspector turned them down, saying that they were community assets, had to remain as such, whether as surgeries or not. He did, in turning it down, criticise Swan Practice for not having gone further ahead with the Lace Hill Health Centre, and warned them that they were getting very close to the deadline where the planning approval is going to run out on December the 24th. So they will obviously we'll have a chance to discuss that more if you wish at the next meeting when Catherine formally reports on those. Catherine, you said I think there's been a couple of other refusals. Do you want to quickly mention those?
No, they'll go on the next agenda, that'll be fine. Are you putting the surgery consultation on full council?
Yes.
In that case, we should also have seen that before the next planning meeting, so.
Discuss it then, okay. Thank you very much. That's number 7. Yeah, number 8, Buckinghamshire Council Matters. To receive news of Buckinghamshire Council, any new documents for?
Nothing.
No. And other information from Buckinghamshire Council members present. Robbie?
Yeah, I just, attended Cabinet today, and I think both the Buckingham Society and Town Council want a resolution on the archaeological site on Bradford Road. I put a niche question into the Cabinet. It was responsibly received, and watched the webcast. I had a feeling that the cabinet member had gone back and read the documentation. His words were mirrored my question in the sense that this is an issue between the archaeological company and the developer. I believe he said that they'd withdrawn their intentions to develop on that site, but I'll watch it again to make sure that's what he said, because that's in the public domain now. So it's just that they had their appeal, and then they withdrawn that. So that's
What they were withdrawing. Do you remember that the original plans had actually quite nice architecture and took to the different levels, so that you've got different roof levels. And then they came back and basically said, we want to bundle lots of modular shoeboxes together. That's what they withdrew.
that must be what he meant. So also it was seen that he said what they already do, which we planning archaeological department have been corresponding with them for a long period of time. We know the time level here, sort of late 2018 to 2019, and that they would be encouraging the two parties to come to an agreement. But then there was, I sneaked back into the questions about what would we do going forward, which you're not supposed to have supplementary, but I almost made a supplementary, and asked what they were going to do thereafter. To which Martin Tech came back and said he thought, his words were, that if we can't find a way forward with this, we need to ask what powers the council's got to actually move this along. Because as he said, it's the border country between two kingdoms, historically relevant. I think actually between the cabinet member and Council Tech, I think I've got as far as I could do today. We moved it forward a little bit more in the sense that now it's on the agenda to be moved forward. I deliberately waited to after the election for clear reasons. It's not an election type issue and it would get lost. So I'm hoping that what we can do, if we watch the webcast and members discuss what was said, then we go back with a question, I would think appropriate from the council then saying, you said that you would do that, can you please keep the council informed about the progress? I'm obviously getting informed, but there's a difficulty where I have officers correspondence sending that to everybody. But I do think we're moving forward. If we haven't got a resolution to it, we've got an acceptance that there's a problem and that it needs resolving. I think that's a big step forward, because 2 years we've had no acceptance in the public domain that there's a problem. But of course that's so, and then of course as we discussed earlier, I'm left with the joys of the Vale Plan on Wednesday, and how do I fit in 2 minutes a lifetime of Greek bile about it. It's proposals, and I did why I went back earlier to ask the chairman to Ruth Clark to send a letter in about the numbers, because my worry is with it, and knowing how these things go at council, if I stand up and say, well, those figures are wrong, somebody will come back and say, oh, well, then it'll get lost in the knee-jerk reactions to the Vale Plan and the politics which is going to go on. I believe that the rush is to agree it because it seems to be the only thing forward. But what we have to remember is in that room, there will probably only be a few councillors who actually worked on that plan. Many of those district councillors would have stepped down and gone and left us with this problem. But it is a lesson to us in the future, isn't it? That that maybe they need to get it right earlier on rather than mess about. But that's that and planning, and I have a motion on the council which is nothing to do with planning, but it's to do with discussing social care precept, which was going to go to council before the election, but we got into it was accepted by Democratic Services, and then lots of motions came in because of the general election, not general, the council election, so that I think, to be fair to Sarah Ashby, she said, well, I can't let one go, so everybody lost out. So I've waited till now to bring it forward. It seems to be a very topical subject at the moment, social care. So I can imagine it will get quite a good debate on Wednesday. And I'm sure the fortunate thing is, for me, if I speak first, I speak last. So if they say anything which is not to my liking, I'll have 5 minutes to round up at the end, won't I?
Thank you, Robin.
So that's it. And I hope that helps with the archaeological stuff. And I know it's something that everybody around this table and the Buckingham site want a resolution to.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the supporting us at the council on Wednesday as well. There you get your wish.
They did say they found 2 medieval ducks.
Yeah, but they could have been dropped on site.
Yeah.
Yeah, but equally it could have been reused.
Yeah.
Anyone any questions for Robin? Or? No, thank you very much, Robin, for that. Buckinghamshire Council committee meetings, just to report that both the North Bucks area and the strategic site meetings for September and August were cancelled. The 1st September.
Can I point out that makes 9 out of a scheduled 10 so far this year since May been cancelled.
And the reason we were given at the parish planning meeting is that I haven't got the staff trained yet. So, Robin,
I think, you know, we talk about this a little bit further, but I do think it's, you know, Buckinghamshire Council's known it's been going to come into assistance for the best part of almost 3 years. Now it's the 2nd year of the local authority being past vesting date and being a statutory planning authority. I wouldn't imagine there'd be many statutory planning authorities in Buckinghamshire who would use the answer they haven't got enough staff to pursue planning applications. My real worry with this is that you know, the next answer you'll get is councils haven't had training. But there's enough councils in Buckinghamshire who have had training to have a meeting, if you see what I mean. 147 of us, I think they could probably find 12 of us who've got planning experience. So they could do that. I'm worried that what's really happening is personally, I'm really concerned that there's discussions that go on with the chairmen of the committees about the appropriateness of applications and the necessity for a committee. This is sort of getting rather stressed at the moment. I'm not really looking for extra meeting, but the only time we did actually meet, I managed to turn down an application in May Morgan. I rather enjoyed that. So I'd quite like to have the opportunity to meet my fellow Buckinghamshire councillors in the committee meeting, hopefully before the council goes for election. But at this rate, we were having more meetings online because we had one. No, we had 3, I think. One we had to do it again because they got the applications on. One application we made. I am worried about this. I think we need to. Well, I need to ask questions about it myself, but on all the things that I've got with social media at the moment, that hasn't got to the top of the pile. I do think the council here should be asking questions about, is it a statutory planning authority's duty to actually hear planning applications? We're now getting quite a way into this calendar year, and they sent out lots of invites for me to tick, and then they send me cancellations to tick. So I would quite like to have a discussion about them as well.
Thank you, Robin. That's helpful. Right, item 10, enforcement report. Any new breaches? Robin.
Just to ask, I did ask a question earlier about this. We have a proliferation of signs on the bypass. We have some blue signs which have now been up for a particular person, and they're up on the Tindrick Road, as you go out of Tindrick coming in, and there's blue signs on the Stoke Stratford entrance, and there's blue signs on the entrance from Milton Keynes to Bletchley. These are in there for long enough now. They look really nice signs, but are we going to allow those signs to continue, or are we just going to ask for some more to put alongside them? Or is there some particular reason that particular person's signs haven't come down by now?
So what signs are these?
There's signs on the bypass, and they're all
About what?
I'm just not trying to cite the company in a public meeting, John, but I am told.
Are they developers signs, Robin? I don't know what you're.
They're traders in the
Traders.
traders signs in the town centre, and they're selling a product, and I think that we shouldn't, I'm surprised
I don't get
that.
out much.
I haven't noticed those.
I've just been looking at them. Maybe I've got a bit of a complex about blue, but I can see them, when I see them, it tends to set me off, and so.
Is that something we could look at?
Could I trouble you to take photographs and you just let me know
or we
which
can
road
ask-
you took them on?
We can ask Lee to do it.
Oh,
I mean, I thought of collecting.
have a look at that.
I thought of collecting them at myself, and then I thought, well, I haven't got legal jurisdiction to collect them at myself. But there are others growing now, because they haven't come down, so now we're getting other little signs go up. And if we, before long, we'll have a bypass. Do you remember we used to have estate agent signs, but all we wanted.
This is actually on the next item that we're talking about redundant signage. We're talking about.
Well, no, but I just felt like you said it's an enforcement issue by actually, to enforce it, actually powers that you've actually got.
Lee will have a look if you could let them.
But they haven't been
exactly
right.
what we're doing.
We've got ourselves.
Please don't take it as criticism.
Does
They have been wrong.
Anyone else have any enforcement matters? I will report one, Councillor Newell, former Councillor Newell, contacted Catherine and I today about an alleged land grab up on Holloway Drive, where 2 trees are being felled and a fence appears to be about to be erected next to the property on public land. She has also reported it to Neil Passmore and to Parks, so hopefully, but if we could just make a note in our agenda. I think Mr. Pring might want a word. Could we suspend standing orders? Just
Yeah, sure.
Steve, what do you want to say?
It is actually, comes under, manager's report. So I picked up a couple of things on my travels, walking around the
We
town.
haven't
so-
quite got there yet, we're still on enforcement. Yeah, just one moment. We resume standing orders.
We're very standing
Does
order.
anyone else have any enforcement matters? Thank you, no. Next item, matters to report, maybe we suspend standing orders.
Steve, Steve.
It's your go again.
On my travels around the town, twice a day on a usual day, there's one sign that John picked up at least 18 months, 2 years ago probably, and that's Nightingale Rise up on Northern Road. That one's still sitting up on the lamppost, and I walk past it every day and I have a little shuffle, so John reported it back then. And I've got a funny feeling there's something on the 421 or 422 pointing people into Buckingham as well for Nightingale Rise. There's also a light out on the circular walk. I did the circular walk last night over Cornwall's Bridge. So I went over Cornwall's Bridge, and where you can go straight on up over, or go right for the state park, or left back around to the football club eventually. Number 53 is out, and there's also another one out on that part. I did do number 53, but I don't know what the other one was. And the other one was, do you think the town council could probably rustle up some drain cleaning? Now, I may put myself forward as a flood volunteer, but I don't really want to be called out every particular night when it comes to it. But they were emptying ones or cleaning one out on Western Avenue this morning, but only one. And as I walked past, I said, "You do no down today." No, we're only going to do the one. The other thing was that basically, as I say, I come from Devon. What they've actually picked up down in Devon, and whether it's something to think about possibly up here, is lighting at night. What they're proposing to do, even though they've got LED lights down there now, they're coming up with a proposal to dim the lights for so many hours of the night. Obviously save the planet, etc., carbon footprint. So when are you going to take that on board?
Thank you very much for that, Steve. We resume standing orders.
Yeah.
Councillor Stutchford.
I think we need to actually, coming up to winter, is when we're all out and about, see if we can get the numbers of some of these lamps which are out, because I'm being advised by one gentleman who drives from one side of Buckingham to the other in his disability to work at Tesco's. To his credit, he's still working despite all the disabilities he's got. But how many lights are out in the town centre? And when you drive through it on the way back, because when they finish at Tesco's, it's quite late, you drive back through the town centre and up the Mays Morton Road and anywhere else. Now, of course, you drive around in a car, you're oblivious to all that because you've got headlights. You don't notice it. It's only when you walk in that you notice all these lights are out. I believe most of them have been reported on odd occasions, but can we please, if we find lights, can we at least, we're going up to the dark nights now, can we just, all of us individually, when we see one out, report them? Because what we don't really want is come really dark nights that we've got places in the town with no lights. These lights have been out now for nearly a year, apparently some of them. It's embarrassing that they're out, but if we have got a problem that they don't come and fix them, or one of the things we're hearing is some of you hear in villages, and I don't know if it necessarily applies to Buckingham, is some of the lamps and stuff are of an age that there isn't the parts for them, or and stuff like that. Now took us long enough to get an acceptance that they, in one of the villages, I think, Sue would recognise that to get those lights, the acceptance, then they need to amend them. That I managed to get that in the end, but I'm worried that we're getting to dark nights. If people are starting to get out again, you don't want them not going out, and it'll affect trade, and it's also it will encourage things to happen that none of us want to support. So if we could do that, please. And if we do find that there is a real problem, then I think we need to around the individual Buckinghamshire councillors on each area, because it is their responsibility as well. And if it's on my area, you must around me. And if it's on the other side around, we do need to get the town lit up for night. On lights as well, I understand from our conversation, the lights on the Chindrick Road, which hasn't got any lights yet, all out switched on. It's going back, it's going to be solar powered lights on those islands, which I know Councillor Cole's been concerned about for a very long time. And I've got a meeting on the 27th of this month, which I have to remember to do with developers about the Chindrick Road, about many things to do with, I only sent them 12 questions to get on with, to do with the Chindrick Road and the section 106 and stuff, and I'm meeting them. And when I've met those, maybe at some point I can come back with a little bit more information, but I have got my real wide concerns about the whole thing.
Yeah, I think we still need to be aware, don't we, parts of the bypass are deliberately blacked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so ignore the bypass, it's
it's the housing areas on those houses.
Councillor Harding.
Yeah, I was waiting patiently by Villiers Hotel yesterday while there were two cars ahead of me to turn into the Market Square area. And then two cars, one goes whoosh straight past me, another car tries to go past me. I thought, well, I'm not having this. So I pull out and stop him going past me and say, get back. And I think people still think, especially if you're from out of town, that you're just parked there. And you're not parked there, you're waiting your turn, so there's only one car in that short bit. Now, some while ago, Councillor White announced that he had finally secured proper signage for that spot. My question is, where is it? Because it hasn't arrived, and that's probably about 2 years ago.
There is a sign there, but it's quite well hidden, isn't it?
Well, it needs, well,
Yeah. I was waiting this morning, looking at it, thinking that's not very obvious. And,
no, it's really not. I looked
Yeah.
at it yesterday, I couldn't see it.
yeah.
And it needs to be a sign further back as well. So can we chase that up and say exactly?
Thank you
let's
very
go and have a
much.
look
Take the
now.
camera out tomorrow.
Because I could not see a sign, a proper sign.
No,
A proper
the last sign that
recognised road
was there was so old that it has actually lost its centre
Yeah, but
loggers and
that's what I was looking at.
the black bit.
Yeah.
But if I take photographs, they take notice quickly.
Thank you. Can I have a plea that we are careful to take our own notices down after events? There is still Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah,
Um, flyers around. And I can remember in the previous council meeting, former councillor Smith saying he always carries around a tool so he can remove them. And I keep forgetting to do that because ordinary scissors don't work, you just break your scissors. So can I plead that when we put notices up, that we are prompt in removing them again?
Thank you.
Because it's not giving a good message when there are town council notices up beyond the date.
Thank you, Margaret. Andy?
Just a note, when we had the band jam, the streetlights were out in the high street or whether.
The whole road?
No, there were 2 or 3 out, because when we were sweeping up, it was a bit dark. But, I think 2 or 3 were out.
Thank you. Robin, is it another one?
Yeah, thank you for that, Andy. That confirms some of the concerns that I'm hearing. Could I propose through you, Chairman, that we do a press release, the clocks are going back, the lights, can residents use Fix My Streets to report lights and try and see how many we can get actually fixed. You know, if we did it as a community, we're concerned that not all the lights in Buckingham work in the crucial areas of the streets and that. Could we, through the Chairman, have a Fix My Streets campaign with residents reporting them to try and get some of these lights back on before we get into the clocks going back at the end of October? We may not get them done, but they might get made sooner.
Is everyone happy with that? It's quite simple, as you say, it's Fix My Streets. So,
But the Chairman to do that with the mayor, isn't it? You know, I don't
It
think
really helps if you get the lamp number.
yeah, but we tell them to get the lamp number, but use Fix My Streets and report it so we can all work together.
We'll do that in the release, thank you.
Yeah.
Right, so any other matters? No, I've got no items for information, apart from to say that the neighbourhood development working group is meeting tomorrow at 12 o'clock, I think. It's a working lunch, we can bring sandwiches.
By all means.
With 12 till 2.
I'll bring a barbecue.
Wine, cheese and
Very hungry.
barbecue.
Can I bring a barbecue?
On that high note, date of the next meeting is Monday, the 11th of October, at 7 o'clock. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where we're going on that on Wednesday. I feel it's going to be a high.
No, it's going to be well established, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's going to be I was told by the Liberal Democrats
Oh, right.
through somebody else
Sorry, yeah.
that they've been organising shout down people for this week. They've literally been lying.
This morning, it was almost.
Yeah, I did talk to someone in the office about changing.
It was quite definitely, if you don't vote this through,
Yeah.
then nasty things will happen, like you're going to have to get your end.
So.
Or we'll go back to the 2004 and work on that.
I'm trying to